Hello, everybody, and welcome into our latest live video. It's Saturday, and yes, we got off to a little bit rocky of a start. I just noticed that audio level was driven way too far up. Sorry if I blew anybody's eardrums out there. I've since lowered it, and I'll keep an eye on it for next time. Today, it is the 9th of September, 2023. My name is CareyHolzman, and today we're going to continue where we left off yesterday. We prepped this motherboard, meaning we got the CPU, cooler, temporarily, RAM, storage, BIOS, Windows 11, all hooked up and rearing and ready to go so that it can be moved on to the next stage of building, which is to remove this cooler, because we're going to use a liquid cooler, and mount the motherboard into the case using the Thermaltake T100, a Tower 100. And then we've got a power supply to install in there, and it's good to go, minus, some cable management. Everything on the counter is left exactly as it was yesterday. So nothing has been changed. It's a seamless transition from yesterday to today, except I have a different shirt on. Other than that, and I've turned the ceiling fan on today. It's going to be 113 degrees Fahrenheit today, September 9th, 2023 in Phoenix. We should have been long past this hot weather last month, but summer is still here. For some reason, I don't know. We got a hot day today, tomorrow. It'll start cooling down into the low 100s the rest of the week. This may be a Halloween where everybody's got to go out with shorts on and a tank top. Crazy. It's in the desert, weather tends to change overnight. You can have a very, very hot day and a very cold night. Although in the city, where there's a lot of pavement and cement and buildings, it tends to retain the heat, keeps it pretty warm at night. You have to go out kind of into the woods a bit to get that more diverse hot, cold during the day and night. You feel that out at Burning Man. You'll be boiling hot in the day and freezing cold at night. And that's typically what it is to be in the desert. Phoenix just keeps getting warmer and warmer and warmer. So I'm going to do what I can to keep myself cool. Got the air conditioning on, the ceiling fan on. And hopefully I don't pass out from the heat. Everything will be okay. Now, I made a mistake. I made an error in judgment. I made a quick decision. When I purchased the OLOy RAM, I bought non-RGB, because when we plugged this in yesterday, I was baffled. I wasn't understanding why it wasn't lighting up. And after the show, I wanted to just take a closer look what I was missing. And if I come up over here to the camera, I have two different boxes in my hand, both from OLOy. Both are DDR5. I have the box we used yesterday. And I wanted this RAM because it was silver. I thought it was white, but it's silver. And I thought it would match the board better because it was white. I thought it was white. But you'll notice nowhere on this box does it say RGB. Now we'll show you the next box, and it's nearly identical in every way, except the RAM is black. And if you look very closely under the DDR5, you'll see RGB. That little tiny difference between the two boxes, the RAM otherwise looks identical. You see that gold line that runs along the top of the RAM? It's exactly the same here. It's just that the RGB shines through that. So you can't even tell by eyeballing it which one of these sticks of RAM is the RGB without seeing that indication on the box. I wish OLOy made it more bold. Typically, though, the answer was probably right in front of me the whole time when I realized what a good price this was compared to this one. RGB is always going to cost you more. Now, I think this was 32 gigs of RAM, and the one I have in stock is 64 gigs of RAM. And that's what we'll use. We're going to pull out this RAM. I have another idea in mind for this RAM, for a case that doesn't have a glass window. Because we're going to use a glass window and have some RGB, I really want the aesthetic of the RGB RAM. And then, like I said, we'll repurpose this. And I always use RAM. It always comes with a build, whether it's RGB or not. I like to have a variety of different sizes and with and without RGB for just such occasions. 64 gigs of that RGB RAM is right around $200. So this increased the budget by $100 because this RAM we used at 32 gigs was, I think, a little under $100. And with the RGB, I think that's $215, $220. Camera Girls added the updated links to the RAM in the video notes. I want to make sure this is turned off and unplugged before I go changing any components out. How's everybody doing today? Hope you're having a relaxing Saturday. Try and see if I can get this RAM to free up here. It is in there tight. Again, when you're dealing with a mini ITX board, you are going to deal in confined spaces. Some people like that and some people hate it. Just trying to see that. I just wanted to verify this was 32 and not 64 gigs of RAM. The module says 32, but I think, yeah, it's 16 times 2. Yeah, I am remembering it correctly. I deal with a lot of computer parts every day, day in and day out, nonstop. Rarely does a day go by where I'm not doing something with a computer. And so a lot of parts, they all kind of get into a blender. I'm like, which one was this? And which manufacturer calls it that? We're going to go ahead and remove the... Actually, no. Let's go ahead and put the RAM in and we'll test it, make sure it's RGB. And then I'm going to take the heatsink off. I expect this is going to work just fine. Rick Lake says hello. Hey, welcome in, Rick. Snake Blood said it's dry and overcast in Detroit, but it's heating up slowly. Yeah, well, I wish I was there, but maybe in the fall. I mean, not in the fall. Maybe in the spring I'll go out to go back out to my hometown and visit with some friends and enjoy the beautiful state, the most beautiful state, the state of Michigan. Bobby Warren says hello. Hey, welcome in, Bobby. All right. Let's try and keep my counter clear of this trash. We'll get that out of here. I really should just put a trash can behind me, but then I wouldn't get as much exercise. Let's see. It's got a little sleeve that comes off of it here. And you'll see the RAM is virtually identical in size, shape, and design. Now, it looks like OLOy has their dark RAM is the RGB RAM. Their platinum RAM is what they call this, is non-RGB. And in their aluminum RAM appears to be DDR4. These are both DDR5. Each manufacturer likes to come up with their own little game of how they're arranging their products as though there's some semblance of master vision, when it just usually confuses the consumer who's not living, breathing, and dying by who makes the RAM in their computer. Some people do. There are people that are very passionate about the RAM in their computer. They don't make up the vast majority, however. Those evangelists for RAM are few and far between. But it is what it is, and we just have to learn how to adapt to it. You don't have to adopt it. You don't have to make it your own. You just have to be able to understand it, make your purchase, understand what you're purchasing, know what to expect, and move on, and never deal with the company ever again and that crazy nonsense. All right, so I'm going to plug this back in, turn this back on, and see if our RGB lights up. I fully expect it's going to. It's not like it's rocket science. You plug it in. It'd be pretty hard to screw that up. Challenge accepted. I just heard somebody say challenge accepted. Okay, hit the power button here, and let's see if this RAM lights up here. Yes. Okay, so now if I turn this way, you should be able to see the RGB. So that's working. If I switch over to the HDMI input, I should be able to verify that we do have 64 gigs of RAM. I'm not too worried about that. It says our RAM size has changed, and hit F1 to run setup. So we'll go ahead and let that restart and boot back into Windows. And then we'll check our system properties just to verify it sees 64 gigs of RAM, which I'm sure it will. Again, you just plug them in. It's not like it's hooking up the red wire and the green wire. And let's just go over to the start menu. I could see it. It's really, really tiny on my screen. And we'll go over to system and see what it says for RAM. Something so tiny, there's no way I can read it from 15 feet away, but I'm gonna make it full screen. I'm gonna see it the way you guys at home get to see it. And it says we only have 32 gigs of RAM. Now that's interesting, unless I have misread the box before I go making any changes. Let me just verify, because I really wanted 32. I didn't want 64. This says 16 gig times 2. Oh. Well, where the heck did I think I had 64? So these are both identical. 16 gigs times 2 on this kit, 16 gigs times 2 on the other kit. This is PC5 7200. This is the RGB RAM is faster. That silver RAM I removed is the PC5 6000. Okay, good. I stand corrected. I must have been looking at yet another RAM kit that I have here that was 64. This is 32. That is exactly what I wanted and intended to put in there. Initially, I wanted it to be silver and not black, but now that the motherboard's black and everything around it's black, I think black is going to work out just fine because I really want that RGB. So 32 gigs of RAM is, in fact, what we installed. Okay, little bit of confusion there. We deal with a lot of parts every single day of our lives. And so these things do tend to happen. The important thing is before it goes out the door, it's right. All right, so now the non-RGB, I'm going to put it back in its little package here, and we'll use that on some future build. Yeah, I have to tell you, I was initially a little bummed out. I was like, oh man, I really don't want to put 64 gigs. It's going to double my price. I don't know where the heck I saw 64 gigs, but I'm delighted to be incorrect because that saves me over $100. Because this build at 13,500, it's going to sail with 32. No one's going to need this with 64 for probably forever, but certainly for the next 5 years minimum, if that. I'm going to put this part back on the shelf because that is as good to go for the next build that it qualifies for. So I'm going to just put it back here and we'll know where to find it the next time we need it. I also have a bunch of smaller 16 gig kits from OLOy that are non-RGB because they were only 40 bucks. 40 bucks for 16 gigs of RAM, no RGB, and it looks the same. It has that same design, that blade design, just no RGB. You can get 4 of those for 80 bucks. Populate all 4 of there, 8, 16, 24, 32 gigs, in the standard ATX. I can certainly foresee that need potentially in the future, so I stocked up. I got a few of them. Thought it was a good price. All right, let's see what you guys are talking about. Ben Laird has a birthday today. Hey, happy birthday to Ben. Ben watches us all the way from Scotland. Mortant joins us in the chat. Welcome in, Mortant. Elko said he's waiting on an RMA from ASUS. His power supply shorted out. Took his motherboard with it. So was it an ASUS power supply? Or just an ASUS board? Ben says he's having his birthday beer. Enjoy that, my friend. William Gale said it's raining here in Glasgow after 5 days of sunshine. Well, you had to know that was coming. You know you were due. Harry, have you ever installed a water block for unshielded RAM? What a waste of money that would be. No. No, the minute you say water block, I'm out. The minute you combine a custom liquid cooling solution into your expensive, delicate electronics, that is hobbyist activity all day long. You enjoy your plumbing. I'm going to be over here doing electrical work. I'll do an all-in-one, you know, that's factory sealed, but I'm not, yeah. And RAM doesn't need any cooling. That's ridiculous. I know the manufacturers like to sell you stuff. They love to sell you stuff. But nobody's RAM needs any cooling. That's just not a thing. When people start driving the equipment beyond its original intended design by the engineers, then they have to come up with unique and creative ways to keep that equipment under control when it's being tortured effectively. It's just, it gives me the heebie-jeebies to think people torture electronics like that, and they just throw their money out the window. And it's frustrating, and it's very high maintenance. You have to drain the liquid on those manual custom liquid coolers once a year. Every time you've got to open it, drain it. It's nasty, it's gross. You risk damaging it. When you seal it back up, you might have leaks, which goes back to damaging it, and do this every single year. No, thank you. You can have all of that. All right, now I'm going to, I think, start dismantling all this. We're going to go ahead and pull the power supply and the heatsink off of here, and then start getting it mounted into our Tower T100 case, because I think it's that time. So let me just step around and make sure I get everything unplugged. Let's see. Yeah, we'll take off our power switch. We won't need that anymore. And that's our RGB cable for the Lightsaber SSD, HDMI cable, and our power cable. We'll just drop all that here, so we know where to find it when we need it. We'll clear some space here on the countertop so we can get that Tower T100 up here, which means that power supply needs to get put away. So let's go ahead and get this monster off the bench. Because we're not using this power supply in today's build, we're just using that for testing. As you've seen me use that exact same power supply for testing a multitude of boards that have come across this bench here in the last, at least the last year. So I think how I want to do this. I guess I want to take the heatsink off first. Remember, we didn't put any thermal material down because this heatsink was only going to be on here temporarily, and there's no sense sealing it permanently when we're just intending to use it for a day. It's a waste of thermal material. It's a waste of cleanup. It's a waste of time. Whoops, I should have unplugged it. Now it is perfectly clean, ready to be used again, as is the top of the CPU. We don't have any cleaning to do. No waste to the landfill for cleaning hazardous cleaning materials, paper towels and Q-tips and cotton balls. A little more environmentally friendly, works a little bit smarter, costs you a little less money, but we're a lot more efficient in working. All right, so we'll put that back on the shelf. The next time we need a Series 13th Gen cooler, we've got a spare one, and we know it works. Now, I'm going to set this aside here to the side. And these empty boxes. This is our original cooler here. Heatsink for the M.2. Got some. You know what? A lot of this can go right into the motherboard box now when I think about it. All the spare parts on our build. Anything we're not using today doesn't mean we're never ever going to need it. So just in case you need it in the future, keep it all together. Boxes for warranty purposes. Usually you don't need the box. This I'm not going to hold on to for the customer. The customer's getting an all-in-one, so they will not get the stock cooler. Nobody does that, by the way. You're not going to buy a computer from Falcon Northwest or, you know, any of these big builders like Dell. They're not going to give you a liquid cooler and then turn around and go, oh, by the way, here's the air cooler that was stock that we didn't use. That's something home users do, or small system builders do. And all it does is add clutter. You're not really, most customers don't really appreciate that. Oh, so you gave me your trash. Thanks. So since we have an opportunity to potentially use it and help somebody else, we'll hold on. Now, let me grab the Tower 100. Here we go. Now, as a mini ITX case, this thing is pretty big. Looks like a big snow cone machine or a popcorn machine. I think the last build last Friday, that was like a cappuccino maker, coffee maker, and this is like a popcorn machine. Boy, I think by the time we're done building computers, we'll have a full concession stand. Kevin Russell renews his support, his membership. Thank you, Kevin. All right, so I have never worked with this case before. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I thought you and I will take a look at it and figure it out together. Things should be intuitive. If I'd never built a computer before, I'd think I was a little crazy to just start working on something without documentation. But having been in this business professionally since 1991 and continue to be in this business nonstop since, including now, I generally don't get any opportunities to study equipment before I go to a customer's location and do field service work. You go out there, you figure it out, get in and get out as quickly as you can. Try and help as many customers as you can on any given day. You'll help more people, make more people happier, and you'll make more money, and your day will go by quickly. So sometimes we still do have to pull a manual. It does occur, but most of the time we don't. If a design is good, I truly believe, if the engineers have done a good job, then things should be intuitive to people who understand what to look for. Now, this is unlike any other case. I'm not even sure how you compare it to anything, but I can tell this top pops up. So I guess I'm going to start here. We have a lid that comes off. I guess I'll just set it right here. I think we're going to have a lot of panels that come off of this. Now, the plus side of that is it should make it much easier to work into a tiny confined space if we can get all the walls away from us. The downside is we might need a place to stack a lot of parts and remember which is left and which is right, what is up and what is down. Again, good engineering will make that pretty obvious. Is this good engineering? Well, we're going to find out together. Down at the bottom, we've got a slot there for the power supply. And I might just put that in because, hey, that looks real easy. I know where that goes. But first, I still want to figure out how this all comes apart. I see a couple of thumb screws back here. Looks like they're captive. Thermaltake makes their own build videos, which is pretty interesting. They're pretty high quality. They don't go through all the details, in my opinion, and because they're very familiar with their equipment, they're very quick about things. I think a little too quick. Things that maybe they need to slow down and get close-ups of. But it's better than nothing, and it's better than most. So this rear part that I just removed here, that contains our fan and a cutout for the power supply. I do appreciate captive screws. And let's see what else. Push on these. No, these don't do anything. Looks like we've got a motherboard tray right here that comes out and we can mount the board right. Is that what that's for? It can't be right. Maybe this is for storage. Yeah, so the motherboard will mount right on the outside edges. That's close though. It's pretty interesting. Maybe you can use this also to get behind the board when you want to mount your backplate for your CPU cooler. This is a much bigger cutout back here than we had in the Rageneck build. So I'm just kind of curious how these little panels come off. Maybe they're going to come out through the top. Let me put my glasses on so as I can see a little bit better. Oh, we've got a little Allen wrench up here. Interesting. Very interesting. And then I am sure the documentation will identify to us where we need to remove screws. I do see a lot of screws on here. There's a couple down here that hold this lid on. And then we have a bunch of tiny little Allen heads right in here. And it does appear that you know what, things may come across the other way. Take a quick look here on the bottom. I still see the same two Allen heads that sort of cap off the top and the bottom of this unit. We've got a couple of filters down here, one for the power supply and another skinny one over here for what appears to be just for ventilation or a big graphics card, I guess. I do like to inspect it for what, so I can reverse engineer it rather than be given the cheat codes. So I can tell by looking at these tabs and slots that this piece sits down this way. So it has to come out by going out towards the top. And I can see that from the way it's built. And I don't necessarily think we have to take those off. I'm just kind of curious about it, that's all. I've never had my hands on this case at this level before. This is the very first time that I am sharing this experience with you as I kind of discover it and figure it out. Now, some people, you know, they'll grab cheat codes and get their way through a game and they'll think they're so much smarter because they cheated. Some people think it's stupid to try and figure things out if you have an instruction manual, but as I mentioned, in the real world in computer repair, most of the on-site service you're going to do will not have a service manual. And so there are some people who are just so tunnel visioned, they can't imagine any other way. They don't lack, they lack the creative, what's the word? It's okay that they're that way. Some people, they just need everything detailed out for them and they know exactly what they're going to go and do. Other people, the people that I admire and the people that I modeled myself after in real life are the people I met that you could throw them in any situation and they could figure their way out of it. So things, for example, like those puzzle rooms, escape rooms where you have to figure things out and get out. That's right up my alley. There's no documentation. You're on the fly. You're learning. You're under a clock. Go. I love stuff like that. Yeah, that's the best video game possible. And if somebody went before you and said, oh, let me tell you all the answers, I'd punch them in the face. They're not helping me. They're ruining it. It's no different than sitting in a movie waiting to see who done it, and the person sitting next to you says, oh, it was the butler all along. And you want to punch that person in the face. You weren't helpful. So everybody's got their own, way of preference of working. And this has done me really, really well. It's kept me happy in my line of work. It keeps me from being a bureaucrat or a robot, as I'm enabled and allowed to use the freedom of thought and critical thinking, imagination, and creative thinking to find unique solutions to get my customer up and running or to solve whatever problem I'm trying to solve. And this way I can fix things I've never fixed before, from dishwashers and air conditioners to automobiles, computers. If it breaks, there's a good chance I will be able to figure out how to make it work. I may not set it back exactly to the engineering standards, but I can get it up and running. And trust me, if your AC is not working and it's 113 degrees outside, and I can get your air conditioner up and running using some bale wire and a toothpick, you're going to thank me for it. All right, now, just pull this up here. I think because the power supply is so obvious, maybe just get that out of the way. And then that lets my mind chew on what I'm looking at and how I want to. It's almost like a way of stalling, but what I'm really doing is, while I'm doing this mindless task of putting the power supply in, which looks pretty obvious, in the back of my mind, what's really going on is I'm thinking, would I go in here? Would I do this? What would I do next? And I will figure all that out by the time I get to that step. You don't know any of this is going on. It's all happening, between my ears. It's happening all the time. I don't normally talk about this side, but it is something I think needs to be talked about and acknowledged, because I think there's a lot of people who don't realize anything's happening, and they don't understand how I'm moving from one step to the other and why I didn't know to move to that step before. It's because in between the time it took to get to that step, I was calculating it out and put an idea in, but let me just try this and see how that works. A lot of times that does work, sometimes it doesn't. And those times where it doesn't, especially when we're live, the clock is running, I'll go look at the manual. There's absolutely nothing wrong with looking at a manual. However, when you're paid by the hour and you need to help as many people as possible, customers are waiting on you, we don't want to see you reading a manual. We want to see you working. If you need to read the manual, go get us somebody else who knows how to fix it. We need to be up and running right now. This isn't story time. You need to get your screwdriver over here and fix this. And if you don't know how, go get us somebody else who will. Come back when you've learned it. When you have customers talk to you that way, you'll quickly understand that you're going to lose that job, whatever amount of money you were going to make, because they're going to give it to somebody else because you want it to do all these things by the numbers. Now, if you want to be a bureaucrat, if you want to work in the government, you'll do well there. But out in the real world, in the private sector, people want results. They're very demanding. They're going to be very restrictive with what they're going to pay you in most cases. And you're not going to get much of a thank you. Basically, the answer is, did you get your paycheck? Yes, I did. Well, then that was your thank you. Now back to work. That's the harsh reality that I live in. So things get pretty serious. They don't want to see you screwing around, joking around, laughing around. Get it up and running. The business is down. We're losing money. There's no time for you reading books. So because I am brought up in that environment, primarily, it's sort of become who I am because I deal with it so often. With home, residences and stuff like that, they'll keep you there all day if you let them. They'll sit there and talk your ear off and ask you a million questions. And then when you try and bill them for all the hours you were there, they'd be like, wait a minute, we were just chatting for 3 of those 4 hours that you're billing me for. You're charging me for the chatting? Well, your time is money. You've got other customers that they're holding you up from. So it's always best to try and urge your customer to let you get the job done in order to I always let them know, you asked me if I could keep this job under an hour. And in order for me to do that, and I do believe I can, I need to focus on the job. I don't mean to be rude. And they usually understand. Sometimes they're just bored watching you work and they start having conversation with you. And when I stop working and I talk to them, I say, well, blah, blah, that's interesting. Now, did you want me to fix this? Or it's a fine line to walk because it can come across quite rude. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to save them money. I'm going to have to bill them for every hour I'm there. And if they want to pay me my hourly rate to just talk to me about the weather, I'm more than happy. I'm paid the same. But I don't want to do that to them. They're going to get all pissed off. I did a great job. I did what I said I was going to do, but you held me here for 3 additional hours to chit chat. And now I've given you the bill and now you're angry at me because you don't think that's fair. It wasn't fair to me. So one of us is going to get pissed off. And I prefer that my customer and myself are happy and we appreciate each other. I'm going to take this power supply frame out because it certainly appears that this little frame comes out here. 4 screws. So if I spin this around here, so you can see what I've just done. I've removed these 4 screws from this frame. We're going to lift this frame right out of there. We're going to attach the back of the power supply to the back of this frame, and the whole thing will slide and lock in. That means it's time to get our power supply. I'm going to move this keyboard and mouse out of our way, and I'm going to grab our GAMEMAX. It's the GAMEMAX Pro Rampage. I've never heard of this company. It has a 10-year warranty. This is 80 plus gold rated, fully modular. It's all white. It should have white cables. Again, going with the color aesthetic. And I did pay more for the color aesthetic. It's the way the market works. It's important to you to have a certain look. You are going to pay literally hundreds of dollars more in the total cost of your machine than if you didn't care what it looked like. And for some people, it's worth it. And for other people, never in a million years. So we've got our documentation and we've got a troubleshooting guide. I'm going to just set that over there. In the box, we have our little bag of modular cables right here, which we can remove. Get them out of the way. And we have a quick inspection tool. This is a plug that you plug onto the end of the power supply cable that will cause the power supply to turn on. This is not normally for inspecting anything. This is for priming custom liquid pumps. I've never used one of these in my life, so I'm not sure what they're for. I think I might have used one on occasion when I had a second power supply I wanted to hook up with a main power supply I was diagnosing, and I just needed to kick it on, and that will force it up. But I mean, I've never used one for the purpose of priming a pump. Here is our power supply. Please only use GAMEMAX cables. Even though other cables from other manufacturers will plug into the power supply, they will fit. They're not wired the same and will likely burn out your equipment and cause damage. This is true of all power supply manufacturers. Do not use anybody but EVGA cables with EVGA power supplies, Corsair cables with Corsair power supplies. Fill in the name of the manufacturer's cables with fill in the name of the manufacturer's power supplies. Otherwise, you are taking a big gamble. And if it doesn't pay off, you could blow up the entire system and just end up be cheaper to buy a whole new computer than to try and fix it. So the power supply is a little bit longer than I expected, but this cage, the power supply, The Tower 100 is very deep, so that's not going to be an issue for us. Now I'm going to place this in with the fan facing down. Fan facing down. And so should be able to just, wait a minute. That's the back of the power supply. This is the inside. We need the outside of the power supply here with the switch. That's the one that has the holes in the corners. Because if you try and put this on the other side, there's no holes. You'd be like, how do I screw this down? You got it on backwards. Now, power supplies like this can be confusing because they have these little hex holes, not to be confused with the round threaded holes for the screws. The round threaded hole that we want up at the top here is going to be over the power button. All these other little holes here, these are just vents. Your screws aren't going to go in there. You could force them. They're darn near the same diameter, but they are not threaded. So we've got a screw. Screw goes here. Screw goes here. Screw goes here. And a screw goes here. All these other holes are not holes for screws. And when you line this up, they should align with those holes. And you'll know because the holes have little indentations. The holes that we're going to put screws in, let me show you. You've got 100 little holes here, and they all look alike. But if you look with a trained eye, you'll see that this hole right here is beveled. All these other ones are flush. So that one's beveled. It's got a little dip in it. So does that one. All these other ones don't have that. So if you're confused, how do you tell them apart? These are also round. The rest of these are hexadecimal. They're like octagon. What's the word? They're like six-sided. They're not round. They've got sharp edges. And again, when we look over on the other, let's see, am I on the other side? On this side right here, there's our beveled hole here. Beveled hole right there, right there. All these other ones are vents. They're just there for the air to come out. Please don't try to drive a screw in them. Pay attention to what you're doing. It should all make sense. You should not only understand what you're doing, but why you're doing it. Now, this bracket that I'm putting on can go on this way or this way. And because there's two equal holes on each side, we can flip it around, doesn't matter. Actually, it does matter. With this power supply, if we flip this around the wrong way, none of the beveled holes will line up. So it looks like we're lining up with the holes, but these are vents, not mounting points. So we either have to turn this way, or we have to turn the power supply, because we need this little notch right here, this notch, to line up with the hole over the power switch. And usually these are reversible, but it does appear that this one is not reversible. I stand corrected. They did it a little differently here. So if that's not going to line up for us, so this piece is going to go on like this, right? Just so we're clear. I want this side, the shiny finished side, to go towards the power supply. If you try and use this lip here to think, oh, this is the side, which is what I was doing, there's no way any of the holes line up. So the finished side, the side I thought was going to go facing the outside, this faces the inside. And when I turn it around and turn it over, all of the holes line up properly. And I can also see the marks on the screws that I removed. So clearly the screws went in this way. Well, that's confusing as all get out. This is what I'm talking about. When we talk about, like Thermaltake makes their own excellent how-to guides here on YouTube. This is a very important detail. I mean, this would be very easy to flip around the other way because that the finished side is, you think that's the side you want to see, right? It's very strange. I'd almost have to go back and rewind this video to see how I took it off, because I swear it came off the other way, but there's no way that that's going to, there's no way that's ever going to align. See, because I can flip it around the other way, and it does, in fact, still, it does line up correctly flipped over. It doesn't line up correctly at all on either side when you turn it upside down. But I'll be darned, because I would think that's the painted side. Why would the painted side go towards the inside? And yet, there's definitely marks here from the screws. So it obviously has to go on this way because it won't line up any other way. And there you have it. I love just trying to figure things out, make sense of things. That's so much more rewarding for me than having somebody spoon feed it to me. And I don't know, I'm not a robot. I'd like to use my brain. Makes me feel good and makes me feel like I have purpose. And when I figure something out, it's a little dopamine release, a little pat on my back, you know, hey, good for me. So the power supply should come with some screws that we can use here. I suspect they're probably not white, but that's okay because the other screws are black. Let me take a look at what's in this bag. White power supply cables. Yay! Regular power cable. Everybody needs one of those. And look what we have right here. We have a little plastic tray that comes with some thumb screws, a Velcro tie, and a Team GameMax Go Faster sticker inside. How cool is that? All right, I'll take it. In the meantime, the rest of this stuff can go right back in here for now. Due to our limited bench space, I just don't have room to spread it all out. So we're not going to be using traditional screws here. I'll use the ones that the manufacturer has included here. Join their spirit. Remember, these need to go into the beveled holes. All of the other hundreds of holes they will not go into. Again, you could tap them out, you could make them work, but you shouldn't unless you like to do it wrong. So just use this one. Okay, it doesn't really matter if we use the case screws or we use the screws that come with the power supply. It's a personal preference, that's all that is. I do tend to stick with the screws that come with the power supply in most cases. I do sometimes make exceptions depending on the build. And then this will just slide right in here like so. Now, we're going to have to get back in there to get the cables hooked up to it. But for now, I just want it out of the way. Again, kind of a tight work area here. switch that power supply switch to off. But that's our power supply installed. Doesn't get much easier than that. There's nothing else we need in here. So I'm going to go ahead and place this back in the bag with the cables. That does go to the owner of the computer. Now, this computer currently has no owner. If any of you are interested in purchasing it, it will be sold at cost. There is no labor fee. And in most cases, I will cover the shipping, which is usually $100 to $150 to ship across the United States. Obviously, I can't keep selling computers for what I pay for them, or I don't have any profit for which to pay the electric bill, the internet bill, buy food. You know what I mean? Like, I can't just keep breaking even. There's no, if I didn't have any bills and I wasn't creating any bills, then I could sustain. But I do want you to understand the business model of selling computers is one where you're intended to make a profit, and not $20 and not even $100. If you're putting in several hours of labor in design and time and building and testing, it's not uncommon for system builders to make $500 to $1,500 for builds, depending on the complexity of the build. Now, when you're getting these Dell systems and HPs and other system integrators, those are being built in mass on an assembly line, or some hourly paid worker is there just doing one. They put this one screw in, or they put the drives in, or they put this one part in, and that's all they do, 8 hours a day. It moves down the line, and the person down the line puts the next part in. There's no pride, there's no uniqueness, there's no artisanship there. It's just an assembly line of robotic behavior, probably easily replaced by robotics. Somebody's still got to pay for the robotics, the warehouse, et cetera, et cetera. So even those machines can cost more than just building one yourself. And I always encourage people to build it themselves because it's very rewarding. It's very easy to do. But sometimes I have people reach out to me and they want to offer me, 2 shekels and a kick. It's like, look, man, I got the same bills you have. So at the very best, on some of these builds, I'll let them go for what I paid for them. And on some older builds I've got that have aged, I'll decrease them because, how much I charge, because they're aged, obviously. Despite the fact they've barely been used, doesn't change the fact that they're older and less desirable. And then those I literally lose money on. And if I continually lose money on builds, well, that's just not going to be something I can offer anymore. So really, it's up to the community, and it's up to the society that we live in. If we want to support small business, if we want to be independent and self-reliant, not count on anybody for anything, or if we want to pay for good service, quality work, and we know that it's worth a little bit more than, say, hiring some jack of all trades. But I put that out there to you because if you're not in business, this may not be anything you think about other than what's the cheapest price I can get without the consequences. When you're dealing with large corporations that can absorb millions in loss because it's taken by shareholders, who cares? When you're dealing with small business, yeah, it can really hurt the bottom line and put them out of business. Whenever I dine at a small business restaurant, I always leave a very generous tip, much more so than a corporate place. And I do that for 2 reasons. One, the next time they see me, they'll say, oh, that's the guy that left a good tip. I want that guy to sit at my station. I'm going to take care of that guy. And the other thing is I want to make sure they're still in business the next time I want to eat there. And I'll do my part. And nothing's worse than having your favorite place you like to go eat go out of business. And then you think, maybe if I would have eaten there a little more often, maybe if I was a little bit more generous on the tip, maybe if more people did that, that place would still be there. So we end up ultimately reaping what we sow. You know what I mean? And if it doesn't really matter to you that much, then you won't care when we. But that doesn't need to be said, does it? I do I always support small businesses above and beyond any opportunity I have. Shane said those are hexagons. Yeah, that was the word I wanted. Hexagon. Thank you. I'm like dodecahedron. No, that's way too syllabic. Syllabic. All right, so this back area here, this plate, I think I'm going to go ahead and take this out because, I don't know, it's looking at me funny. Those are in there tight. You're not going to be able to turn those with your fingers, even though they're thumb screws. Grab my electric driver. Wiring too much effort. And I need my glasses because I can't really, the black screw with the lighting, I can't see the top of it. Now I can. I'm going to do this so I can see it. There's one. Sometimes it's very difficult to work backwards for the camera, and it can give you the wrong impression of my skills. But working upside down and backwards, that's a whole different skill set, especially being able to see through things. Now, it does appear that with those two thumb screws out, this piece looks like it lifts up and it comes out, which it did. Once again, I really enjoy trying to figure things out on my own. Just take a look at it. See if I can figure out, does this go up? Does this go down? How's this going to go? Now, getting in here to put the motherboard in, this glass has to come off. I imagine these sides will easily come off. So, I have been thinking, as I mentioned, different ways to get in there, and I've been looking. And I can see the tracks that they slide in and out of. And it certainly appears, from what I'm gathering here, it looks like this top has to come off. And for this top to come off, it looks like we've got to remove 1, 2, 3, 4 screws. And that may be all we have to do. I think I'm still going to avoid the documentation at this point and just see if my guess is correct. All right, that's a regular, oh no, it's a flathead screw. It's not a regular case screw. 1, 2, 3. I want to just feel for it because I can't see it. There it is. 3. Should be one more in here. 4. So still maybe more that have to come out. I'm not sure. You got to start somewhere. Now, when I look, I can see there's little, what appears to be little hooks that go down. If I'm going to guess, that would slide this way or straight up. Oh, look at this. Progress. Something's holding us down right here. What is it? Tell you what it appears to be is a support bracket right here for all the buttons and I/O here. And I'm going to guess if this piece comes out. Okay, so this piece is just the outer edge. It doesn't contain any center structure. So that means it looks like there's a screw right up here in the top corner that has to come out. And it's a different screw. It's a smaller head, and it goes right up here in this top. It's very obvious, and it looks like it's part of the support plastic for those front port I/O. Is that what's holding us? Yeah, that was what was holding us up. So we have a number of different screws here. I want to remind you, we've got these flathead screws. We've got this one very unique coarse self-tapping screw that goes into the plastic here. And then on top, we've got a fan. We've got a wire tie holding. Let's see. What a shame that that screws together. I think something that important that's going to come off so frequently, where they even equip the screws and hardware for this case, should be a panel that you push a tab in and lifts up. You shouldn't have to unscrew to have to open it up, in my opinion, but this is what Thermaltake has designed. And we'll give it a spin around here. As I mentioned when I was looking at this, like, you know, it certainly appears that all these panels, like, you can look through the glass, you can see the tabs and slots are. It looks like that they want to lift up, and I'm like, well, then this lid has to come off. I just didn't know if the lid was supporting this fan or if the lid was supporting this tray, but this tray is secured with those little Allen bolts. So my guess, once again, I'm guessing, it looks like now nothing prevents these panels from lifting straight up. And I imagine with ease, and I could be wrong, no, not, those panels lift right out. So there's our main front panel. Set it down here. And then we have panels on the left and the right. So I'm going to take the right panel facing it, lift that up. Oh, and I thought these were two different pieces. This all comes out as one piece. This should make it easy to not confuse left and right, because these are, the black vents are going to go towards the back of the case. I'm going to put the right side down next. And now I'm going to take out the left side. I'm just going to put both hands inside and lift up. And then I will put this left side last. So the left side will be first when we go to put it back together. Well, that looks really easy to work on. I mean, as far as a mini ITX case goes, holy cow, super easy access. Now, it's designed in much the same way as the coffee maker machine we did, the Seagate. All the I/O ports are going to be up top, and your video card can go in vertically like this, hence that vent down below. Nice cable management grommet right here. And then when we put our liquid cooler on, with the radiator up here, there's only room up here for a 120 millimeter fan. A 140, what did I get? I got a 120, so I guess it needs a 120. And we can attach the back plate, and then we can put this back cover back on. It goes back here, that's going to cover that up. And this also appears to hold a couple of SATA drives if you wanted to add SATA drives to it. At the end of the day, it should look really nice. Now we've got a number of screws, zip ties. We've got a motherboard speaker. It's weird to start seeing manufacturers including that again. And then we have a number of plastic panels used to block off ports that you're not using. But where? Where would we be blocking off? How many did they give us? There's quite a few in here. Oh, just two ports. Pretty small. Go back. Not long enough. Do they go in the front? Not long enough. Looks like two more 2.5-inch drive trays right here. Looks like you can have 4 now. Keep adding them up. I'm not sure where these go. I imagine the documentation will explain it to us. And I'm sure they're optional, and probably a lot of people don't even use them. since I don't know what they go to, I can't picture where they go in my head. Put that there. Move this wire tie over here. And I think I need to get a cold Gatorade and just take a break for a second as I'm sort of figuring out my next step, which will be, I think, putting the motherboard in and then the all-in-one cooler. Once that's put in, before we assemble anything, we'll wire it all up and turn it on and make sure it boots. Everything boots good. Then I still won't put it together. That's when cable management needs to be done. Well, you have all this open space. When you get your cable management done, then the panels go on. It's all done. That is a pretty easy case to work in, I've got to say. It's looking very promising. Les Stevenson said he had a hard time getting on yesterday. Kept saying he wasn't a member. Well, you don't have to be a member to watch these videos. It's only on Mondays. Whether or not you're a member is not a contingent on whether or not you can join us. So I have no idea what you were doing or what was going on with your connection with YouTube, but I'm glad you made it in today. It's always good to see you, my friend. Thank you for being a member and supporting what we do here. I'm going to grab all these power supply cables. I'm going to just kind of set them down. Once again, this countertop is very crowded and really wish I had one twice as long. I just bumped into all those panels with my foot, so I am going to move those over here so that won't happen again. It only happened once. It gets really jammed in here, so you definitely don't want to damage anything from being crowded in. I think what I want to do is just lay this flat and work with gravity. This part right here is where our I/O shield's going to go. And all these cables, that's all your front port I/O. That's your front port audio, your USB 3, ARGB LED, reset. Oh, this has a reset. Power LED and power switch. It gives us all four. And then this fan will come out and we're going to replace that with our all-in-one cooler, which comes with its own fan, and that's also RGB, so that'll look nice and pretty. We could potentially sandwich it and put a push-pull configuration, but that's just, in my opinion, it's stupid. Doesn't really make much difference in cooling in a push-pull configuration in reality. I've also noticed, since I've got this on its face here, that there are additional thumb screws underneath this. If I can turn it and show you without knocking everything over. We have thumb screws here, here, and here that allow us to pull these panels out. And that could be very useful for cable management. If we're able to, for example, take this one off from the front, it looks like this whole thing can be stripped bare, which can be very, very convenient if you're loading a bunch of cabling in there and you need to figure out some clever way to jam it all in there. But it looks like, does that slide down? Does that come out? Time for glasses again. Yeah, it slides down. We have a panel here, and then we have this large opening. And here's the thing. In front of the large opening, it now exposes two screws. And those two screws right here hold on to the floor of the system here. So a screw right here and right here can remove this whole floor. That also means that you would be taking out these drive trays right along with it. And then there's two additional screws in the back that support the floor. So two screws in front, two screws in back. I like that. That's I like that you can get to everything. Even the motherboard, the power supply frame that holds power supply in, that also can be removed. When you remove this filter, you can see there are screws right up under here and here. And then this whole power supply frame just completely gets removed from the system. I don't know why you'd want to, but if you're a modder, just imagine what the possibilities are with that. Gregory Howard contributes $50 in Super Chat. He says, hello, everybody. Do I have to email several times? I'm not doing something right about the Seagate computer. Help. Oh, you would need to email me, Gregory. Camera Girl, have we heard from Gregory Howard? Yes. And I sent it for email. Yes. Okay. So I guess, Gregory, you sent an email to the About page, which went to Camera Girl. And then she told you to email me and sent you my email address. And I haven't heard from you. Do make sure you're spelling my name correctly. A lot of people put a T in my name or they leave the E out, and I never get your email. So do please double check, triple check when you're typing my email address in that you spell my name correctly. I should see an email from anybody, literally anybody in the world that spells my name correctly. That's the only reason I can think I would not receive an email from you. Sometimes people are in a hurry. They're excited, they're anxious, and they're not realizing they're adding letters to my name does not have. So I recommend slow down, read it out loud. So it's a good way to catch typing errors is reading them out loud, and then kick that off to me, and then you'll get a response from me within 24 hours. If you did not get a response within 24 hours, you sent the email to somebody else. The email address, Andy Kane has just put my email address right there. It is spelled exactly that way into the chat room. Email addresses are not case sensitive, so it's uppercase or lowercase, doesn't matter. Passwords are always case sensitive, but email addresses are never, ever case sensitive. So don't worry about upper or lower case. Just make sure you get all the right letters, no extra ones. Don't leave any out. Put them in the right order, and I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. Thank you for supporting the channel. I look forward to talking to you. Now, putting this motherboard in, let me just take a look here. I would lay this down this way and work with gravity. I think that's what I was saying before. Our I/O shield's going to go right through here. So we should be able to simply pick up the board. Just lay it down gently. I mean, come on. How easy is that? Right? When you see me struggle and always tell you about the confined spaces of ITX cases, well, Thermaltake has figured out a way to be able to work in a confined space, but to remove all of the walls, all of the obstacles, so you can get your hands in there and do what you need to do and then put it all back. However, this is one of the single largest mini ITX cases, and that doesn't hurt, you know, to be able to have room to work in it, to have a larger case. All right, let me open up the bag of accessories that came with our case. We've got nylon zip ties. We have a bunch of screws, and we have a motherboard speaker. Okay, and so I need the motherboard mounting screws, and I'm not quite sure which ones, since they're not separated. They just throw them all in one bag. Just a mishmash of screws here. Let me just take a look through and see if it's obvious which ones go to the board. Usually they're a short, coarse threaded screw, and sometimes they only give you 4 of them. Like if there's one particular screw, you only have 4 of them. That might be because on a mini ITX board, you only use 4. These coarse, short screws, there's a lot of them. There's a lot more than 4. Starting to have my doubts now. But I think those are the ones. find out. I'm going to say yes. Those fit perfectly. Now that was almost too easy. So that, you see that angle? That's because the motherboard needs to be pushed in a little bit for the screw to align with the mounting hole. And in order to do that, I'll have to loosen these other ones up because they're keeping it immobile. Should always, I always tell you guys this, you should always just start the screws, don't tighten them. I was a little overconfident here. I felt like I was couldn't do any wrong. That's come back to bite me. And I knew better. I did it anyway. It's okay. I've paid my consequence. Now the board moves forward. Should line up. Much better. And then just one more left. 4 screws, 1 in each corner. That's all mini ITX boards will ever use. No variation. One, 2. Three. And 4. Back up on its feet. And look at this giant cutout area that we have available to us. Very considerate of a backplate for a third-party cooler. Of varying motherboards, AMD, Intel, varying chipsets. That's pretty much going to accommodate everything as far as I can tell. Whereas on that Radeon X system, didn't even accommodate the one we used. I'm not even sure which ones they used to test, but it certainly wasn't ours. I'm going to grab all the rest of these spare screws and I'm going to put them back in this bag for now because, again, I have very limited space and I don't want to knock things over and have to pick them up off the floor. And since I don't know how many I've got, I won't know if I picked them all up or not. So we'll keep them all together here, back in their bag they arrived in, so we know where they are the next time we need a screw. Okay, so now, of course, we have our ARGB cable coming off of our Lightsaber SSD. We could certainly plug this little speaker in if we want to use it. It's optional. Typically, if I've got them, I'll throw them on there, but I won't go out of my way to add one. And that typically goes side here. Right above the power connector. And that just gives you your beep, you know, when you turn the system on, or if there's a system problem, you may get a series of error beeps. It's not very useful and quite annoying, but a lot of people do seem to like having them. Some people pay me to take them out. But like I said, you don't really see them much anymore. So if I see them, it's almost a novelty to plug it in because it's like, I remember these from the 90s. Planet Cryos contributes $10 in Super Chat. He said, my latest video I showed off your mouse pad I purchased from your merch store. I love it so far. Also, I'd like to say hello to you and everyone. Hey, right on. Thank you, Planet Cryos. Thank you for supporting our channel. And be sure and check out Planet Cryos' YouTube channel and check out his excellent videos. Highly recommend them. Just looking in the chat to see if there's any questions here before we move on. We're going to need to put the liquid cooler in next. So I imagine this fan's going to come off. And then we're going to have to mount the back plate to the back of the board. And then once all that's on, we can hook it up and turn it on. It is very, very hot in here. And I'm a little low energy today after the opposite of yesterday. And debating how much longer I want to bring on today's broadcast or stretch this out till tomorrow, because this heat is getting to me. So I'm going to just take a little break, cool down a little bit, and see how I feel. So if you have any questions, I'm looking in the chat right now. In fact, I'm going to also check the phone and see if I've heard from Gregory Howard. Looks like another mini PC is being sent here. This one from Minis Forum, due to arrive next week. So we've got that to look forward to. Appreciate all the support over at Minis Forum. Mark Gaines, joining us from Northern Ireland, sends a PayPal contribution of $23.90. And Thomas Tidwell sends a PayPal contribution of $10. Thank you both. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Mark. I'm going to check the spam just to see if Gregory Howard could accidentally wind up in the junk folder. Nope, I got nothing in junk. He's just not sending it to my address. It's probably a misspelling, or he hasn't sent it yet. Okay. Gary says I should make it a 3-parter and don't overdo it. I might. Gordon wants to know, will we be able to see your cable management? I don't normally show the cable management because I do have videos that I filmed at Studio A showing the cable management, and all you see is my back. You can't see anything I'm doing. There's no way to get between me, the length of my arm, and where I'm running cables. You can see what they look like before when I step in front of it, and see what they look like after when I step away. So the whole process is a complete waste of time. Instead, what I prefer to do is to do the cable management off camera, and then I'm free to reroute the cables and avoid anybody's judgment about, oh, I told you shouldn't have run it that way, and just the general harassment from people who can't see anything. What's the point of this? I don't want to deal with that nonsense. So I'm not showing the cable management because it's not really possible for me to show it, and it's too much harassment. So what I'll do is, in my own time, I'll do the cable management the way I want to do it. And if I have to do it 16 different times before I like the way it looks, you'll never know. When it's all ready to present, I'll take it out and give it the spin on the dash here and let you guys see what it looks like. So that's just the way the internet is, and that's how I'm going to, don't really have much of a choice. Because of that behavior, I'm just not going to voluntarily subject myself to it. It also isn't very beneficial for many people since you can't really see anything anyway. So maybe in their frustration, they get nasty. So we just don't even offer that. You have to understand that every cable management on every system is different because of the shape of the case, the variety of parts, the individual power supplies, whether or not they're modular, the length of the cables. there's no two that are alike. It's not, I just don't think you can learn how to do cable management by watching it. You can get some ideas, but for the most part, it's common sense. I mean, if you need me to show you the forks go where all the rest of the forks go in the drawer with the silverware, and we keep all the small spoons together and all the big, I think if you look at it, you can figure that out on your own and realize putting the forks with the spoons doesn't look right. It's really just an aesthetic, and it's something for each of us to individually see the beauty in, to whatever level of detail you care to exert that amount of effort towards. Some cable management jobs, I've seen people do some amazing origami with cabling that's braiding and all kinds of cool stuff. What a complete waste of time. It can also make those systems very, very difficult to work on. I try to find a balance between, I want this to look good, but I also want to be able to get in and get out for any upgrades or repairs. And so each of us will have our own set of priorities. A lot of people, most people, when I go to people's locations to do repair, they don't do cable management. They talk about it, but when you go to look at their system, it's just, you just pull a panel off and the cables just vomit out onto the floor. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that either. Elijah says, Carey, I wish I could send some rain over to you from DC. It's nice and cool. Oh, I think we've got some coming. I'm pretty sure we're a little past due for it. And it'll also cool the weather down and knock all the dirt, dust out of the air. When it rains, it pours. Don't worry. We'll get ours, and we'll get it with interest. It'll be bad. Now let's just hope the roof stays on. Ray Burke says hello. Welcome in, Ray. Planet Cryos contributes $10. He says, I'm watching the 4080s and 4090s like a hawk for the best deal. I'm hoping to get one soon. Cable management can be lengthy and tricky at times, depending on a ton of stuff. It's really hard to show that live, and well said. Yeah, I encourage any of you to try it sometime. Now, if somebody wants to specifically offer me cash to show them cable management, like for private tutoring, it's a different story. When someone's watching my videos for free and they just want more and they want me to work harder and more so they can continue to enjoy it for free, I'm not real motivated to that, especially when it results in other people complaining, right? And I have to deal with harassment. So there's certain objects I avoid, certain subjects in like cable management, I just typically won't show. It's just too much of a hassle. Not worth it. Mortant says hello. Hey, welcome in, Mortant. All right, what are we at? 2:30. We've been on an hour and a half. That's pretty short for me, but I am drained today. I really think it's the heat. We've got another day of heat scheduled tomorrow. And then after that, things should start to cool back down into the low 100s. That's cooling down. But this is sapping. I mean, I've got the ceiling fan on, I got the AC on, and I am burning up here. This makes it very difficult to work because I'm uncomfortable. And it doesn't put me in a very good state of motivation to be active. I just want to sit on the couch in front of a box fan. We are in September, fall is right around the corner. I'll be glad when I can turn the AC off and we can turn the noise suppression system off and you can hear more of the screwdriver and, the atmosphere of the room. But that just comes along with being in Arizona. So I think maybe this is a good place to stop. And who knows, maybe I'll thumb through the manual, or at least through the manual on the all-in-one coolers, so I kind of have an idea. Or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just say, hey, let's just take a look at it. It's not rocket science, you guys. Shouldn't need to have the manual. I mean, if you know what you're doing, if you're a professional, or If you're somebody with the mindset, you like to reverse engineer things and you really enjoy the challenge, there's far more pride to me figuring it out. Just like a video game, it's far more pride to figuring it out than having somebody give you the walkthrough. Put my TV in a walk-in freezer. Do you have any idea how much it would cost in electricity to keep a walk-in freezer cold in Phoenix? I can't even imagine what restaurants must pay. We also have a pretty slow chat room here today, so I don't think it's just me. How many people are watching? It doesn't seem like there's very many people today. 221, not bad. It's awfully quiet in there for 221 viewers. I think we're all kind of feeling it. So yeah, let's wrap it up for today. I'll be back. I'll try and be back tomorrow. If not, I'll have to pick it up on Tuesday because Mondays I do the members only videos, in which case I'll have to clear the counter. I don't want to have to clear it. I don't want to just leave everything alone and pick up where we left off. That would be the least amount of effort. So I'll try and come back about this time, about 1 o'clock tomorrow, if possible. If not, like I said, we'll pick it up later in the week. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for all the super chats and the contributions. And I look forward to seeing you all again very, very soon. And thank you to Camera Girl for the thumbnail. Until next time, bye for now.